Hi, and welcome to a new episode of The Learning Curve with Kenny. Today, we have a very interesting subject for you. We'll be talking about well being. Specifically, we'll be talking about mental health aspects. And we're going to talk about that in general, but we'll also move that over to a little bit of focus on learning and development. So we'll have a nice crossover and match. And with me today is our guest, and that is Todd Morgan. He's the Chief Executive Officer, ooh, that sounds like a nice title, of Outside the Locker Room. And Outside the Locker Room is a registered charity providing mental health education and welfare support to communities across Australia. So we went to the far ends of the earth to find such a great guest for you guys. So, Todd, we're going to be talking about health and well being, like I said, with a focus on mental health and
Yep.
cross that over to learning and development. So, tell me about a little bit about what you do, what your company does, what your charity does,
Yeah, I
and
think
what you do within that charity.
you're probably the
But
first one
don't
to call
don't
me.
don't break it up. Don't tell everything. So just
No,
you're gonna have to
just just
keep it
just a
slim.
little bit. No, I can do that. I
Yep,
think
just a
you're
little
the
bit.
first person to call me the chief executive officer for a long time. I don't like that one. I just like being Todd, to be honest. I'm pretty laid back, pretty cruisy on it all. But basically, what we do at Outside the Locker Room is we run education programs. So around
Hmm.
mental well-being, leadership and culture, resilience, cyber safety. We do things around inclusion, respect, drugs and alcohol, in sporting club, schools, and businesses. And we've done that right across Australia in every single state, and for ages 13 and above. We're really looking at trying to provide vital skills that people actually put into
Hmm.
practice as soon as they leave our sessions, rather than just talking at people and going, "Hey, here's the signs and symptoms, and here's the stats, and this is what you need to know." We want to try and provide the participants that come to our sessions with, "Hey, here's a skill, and if you practice it,
Hmm.
you can actually go and put that into your everyday life, and it's going to help your mental well-being move from a negative into a positive, or maintain that positive as much as you possibly can." So
I
that's
guess that would
basically.
probably be one of the biggest success factors, right? Is when you, I do a little bit of training myself, like exercise training. One of the biggest success factors is actually putting, not only being given a tool or a training method, but actually being able to apply that and being able to apply it relatively, I would say, easily, um, and then being able to maintain that and then seeing progress from there.
Yeah, and for us, simplicity is key. That's the biggest thing. Is if a skill's too complicated, most people aren't going to put it into practice. Coming from
Hmm.
a physical background myself as a personal trainer, the if you can try and teach someone how to squat properly and you can do it in the most simple fashion, but they pick it up really quickly, then they're going to be
Hmm.
able to progress with their training quite advanced, as soon as possible. And it's the same when it comes to mental health. So one of the easiest skills that we teach right at the start is, if we walk into a room of 100 people in a sporting community, for example, the question I ask everyone is, who said hello to everyone in the room? And
Hmm.
no one ever puts their hand up, not one person. And so I
Really?
go, right, well, what are you going to do for the next 5 minutes? Is you're going to go and say hello to every single person. So you can handshake, you can high five, you can fist bump, you can hug, you can do whatever you want. Just go and
Hmm.
say hello to every single person, because it takes not even 5 minutes. It takes 2.5 minutes to get around to all
Hmm.
100 people if you're just fist
Hmm.
bumping everyone and saying hello. And as soon as everyone gets up, they start smiling. It is the most simple thing to do when you're walking into a community, whether it's a workplace or a school or a sporting club. You say, "Hey, how you going?" You give someone that small time of day that takes half a second, and it could be life changing. And it's just something real simple, real easy, real quick. You can put into your day tomorrow.
Okay, okay. So that's like the first piece of advice there that we have already from you. Some knowledge bits that will be I think we'll be spreading out through the whole podcast here. So let's dive right into the subject. So, like I said, we're talking about well-being, and our focus is, though, learning and development. So
Yep.
the digital age has basically introduced us to new challenges to mental health, such as information overload, digital distractions, and social media pressures. What are the main challenges for mental health and well-being when you work remotely? Or
When
what
you
have you discovered to be the most challenging
Yeah.
things?
So I think in regards to working away from the office,
Mhm.
yeah. So I think the biggest one for us that we notice in almost everyone that we talk to, especially when it comes to businesses, when working remotely, is that lack of social connection. And I don't think
Mhm.
you can beat the ability to shake someone's hand, or if you've got a good enough relationship to give someone a hug in the morning and then spend the next 8 hours with them. And we spend more time at work than we probably do with our loved ones. We spend 8 to 10 hours at work if it's at home or in the office. And then you
Mhm.
probably only spend 2 or 3 hours of that day with your loved ones at home, or you're usually rushing around to get them to activities they need to if you've got kids. So working remotely, one of the biggest challenges that we've seen is that social connection. And people are like, oh, I
Really?
get it from going to get my coffee. And it's like, well, do you? Yes, your life's a little bit easier because you can get to the gym and you can pick up the kids at the right time. But a lot of people are
Mhm.
losing their social skills. They're losing that ability to have conversations and difficult conversations. They're losing the ability to overcome challenges. They're losing that ability to create new friends. Um, and that's one of the
Okay,
biggest things that we
is
find.
is part of that though. I I would like to challenge that a little bit because
Mm,
I've had there was interesting discussion because um, for my mindset, my whole working life has been, centered around going to the office. So, of course, COVID is the big change factor that
yep.
changed everything, and even for me, um, moved me from working in an office setup to working in a remote home setup. Now, I have to say, also, I have a very, 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 very big advantage over most people that work in the office is that I live, factually about 5 minutes by car away from work, or 7 at most. So theoretically, I could walk to work. So that means that the first barrier I have to actually, home office versus uh, working in the office is for me relatively low. So I don't have a very big commute time, and I think that's one of the biggest factors. But where I'd like to challenge on is my theory of generation change. So
Mm.
I grew up with a generation, and you partly too, that are that for them, basically that's all we know. Work in the office. Remote work was something that you did. I mean, maybe you took the laptop home to do some extra work, but solely working at home is um, not something that they're familiar with. Whereas the new generation of employees is used to working home. They're used to having all this, somewhat virtual contact. Be it dating apps, be it this, be it that, whatever. Be it even online gaming, for that matter. People have, for example, the funniest story is I remember one time uh, it was a winter, and a colleague of mine said that she's going on a picnic. I'm like, where are you going on a picnic? And she's like, well, I'm meeting the rest of my clan online. I'm like, oh, okay. So that was a whole new experience. So the question that I have for you then basically
Mm.
is, do you think that this shortcoming, especially of social interaction, is a generational thing, or is it a humankind thing? So does it apply? Is it just from our perspective as a generation that grew up going to work, and the new generation, say, being in a different social connection environment? Do you still see for them the same need to have interaction physically?
Yeah, and yeah, definitely, 100%. And the reason for that is that we've never been more connected, as we already know, with the technology we have in the world. You can pick up your phone and call anyone you want. Doesn't matter where they are at any time of the day. You can send a message and usually get a message back straight away. The ability to
Mhm.
connect socially is still there even when you are working remotely. But one of the big things that especially what we're finding here in Australia, is that the people that are presenting with severe loneliness that's leading to poor mental health between the ages of 30 and 45 has
Mhm.
skyrocketed as a record high. And these people are connected every day. They're on meetings with their workmates. They've got their family at home. But if they're not out there and involved in the community and having those conversations, then nothing beats a 5 minute walk to get a coffee in the morning, talking about how your
Mhm.
weekend was with your workmates, rather when you jump onto a Zoom call and you're straight into a meeting at 9 a.m. Usually, when you go into the office at 9 a.m. or you go and meet up with people to work, you'll go and you'll be able to vent. You'll be able to talk about things that are, bothering you, which is, oh, my team lost on the weekend, or my government's making silly decisions, like here in Australia is cancelling the Commonwealth Games. So yes, we are connected, and that connection is still there, and that's fine. But one of the massive challenges that we're currently facing here in Australia when it's working remotely is that
Hmm.
feeling of isolation, that loneliness that we're not getting from that in-person contact, that you find from going into the office. Now, it doesn't have to be every day. Completely
Hmm.
understand about the commute. For a lot of people, there's a massive commute, but
Hmm.
for a lot of people that are working from home, they don't have outside work activities either. Whether that's a
Hmm.
sporting club or being a part of their kids' activities, or whether it may be a community group, whatever it is that comes their hobby. A lot of people, yes, they're working from home and they're like, this is fantastic. I'm getting my social connection through my phone and through my computer and seeing people. But when it actually comes to human to human contact, they are missing that. And we are seeing that in the younger generation coming through as well. That, yeah, they want to work from home, which is
Okay.
absolutely fantastic. And it's a really, really good thing to be able to work remotely. But there needs to be some education around that of how do I do it where it doesn't detriment my well being as well.
Okay. Is there a formula? So in general, then, as a general blanket statement, you would say, um, overall, for mental health and mental and well being, um, it is considered positive if you have some type of actual face to face, touch to touch interaction at the workplace than solely being remote.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
A
Okay.
hundred,
So
100%. Yeah.
so we
Because
can, we can underline that.
yeah, because you need to be able to have those conversations that don't relate to work. And most people that, and
Mhm.
I might be different for yourself, but most people that do work remotely, if they're jumping onto a call and you're not making a conscious effort to talk about what you did on the weekend or how your life is going or how your family is going, you won't get that in a Zoom meeting. Now you're
Yeah.
productive, you're really productive, but you got to also remember that, work is about building relationships and where friendships
Yes.
come from as well.
Mhm.
And if we don't at least have events or a day a week in the office, or a day a fortnight in the office where you actually get to come together and have those walk to get a coffee and those over the water cooler moments, those relationships don't get built as strong as what they possibly could be. And we have superficial friendships. We don't have those deep and meaningful connections that we probably once had from the workplaces before COVID.
Okay. So we've established that's a baseline. We made a blanket statement. Not everybody
Yep.
might agree, but from your
Okay.
experience, you would
Yeah.
definitely say you would support that. Um, And from my experience, I would also support it, but I'm a naturally talkative person, so I like to interact with people physically, and sometimes just chit chat. And um, from my experience, I must also say the other thing is that um, oftentimes, just like wandering. Sounds kind of stupid, and I might get in trouble. But, when you wander in the offices, you might catch up on a conversation that you know. That wasn't that you weren't directly part of, but by stepping into that room, there's some information that might be related to something that you're currently working on. Those are things that you, I think, miss out when you're solely at home. Um, and I have the feeling that also people, it's much easier for people to isolate themselves. And there, I think, might be one of the points that you raised that people aren't really maybe aware of what this isolation leads to because I'm not an expert on mental
Mm.
health and so forth, but I think even when people that have depressions oftentimes don't recognize they have a depression. Is that right? So,
Correct. And it does take time to figure out the signs. And I think if you're someone who's working from home, and my view is working from home is great, it's about finding balance in it. And if you're someone that
mhm,
works from home and you're getting out and you say getting to the gym and you're having those social connections with friends and family and you're catching up with those people you love, then that's probably not going to lead to this feeling of isolation and loneliness. But if you're finding someone that is clocking on at 7 a.m. in the morning, not getting off until 7 p.m. at night, and they're not getting out of the house, they're not finding those social connections outside of the screen that they're finding at home, then they're the signs. And I guess that's where the education needs to come in on, hey, are you doing these things outside of when you are working remotely to make sure that you're keeping your mental well-being high, rather than where a lot of people that we're finding, especially here in Australia, that are sort of log on at 7, log off at 5, then go, oh, I could have sent that email, log back on at 7:30. Now they've taken their attention away from their family. They
Hmm.
send one email, they get stuck to 8:30, and they go, I should probably go to bed because I got to be up and log back on at 7, but I don't start till 9. So it's about finding balance. Some people
Hmm.
do it amazingly, which is absolutely awesome. But some people just need some direction and some guidance on how to actually get to that point if they are working remotely.
Okay, and you also provide that for businesses, right? Or you've been
100%.
coaching it. Okay, we'll get to that in a second. Now
Yep.
let's look at the flip side. Flip side, of course, is and this is something that I really haven't thought about, but is there? What about for those people that are at their job? Is there also we've talked about, I mean, it's easy for someone to relate to or basically see how, staying at home, isolation and so forth, and what that all leads to. But what about mental health and well-being when you do come to work? Is how does that, what's the flip side of that? What's your experience in that? Because there, or can you explain a scenario on that? Because right now I can't even off the top of my head think of um, mental health, as a problem when you're at work. So how?
Yeah.
Give me
Yeah.
an
So
example of that.
I think if you're looking, it depends on which side you want to come from, positive or negative. And I guess we can try and do both. We'll start with the negative and
Yeah,
finish
sure.
with the positive because I
That
think
sounds good.
always want to finish with a positive is always good. Um, it sort of positive sandwich here, but when you go into the office and you're working with people in the flesh, you
Hmm.
can usually get a project that's going to take you 15 hours done in 3 because you can ask the questions that you need to straight away instead of sending an email, waiting for a reply, get one an hour later. Oh, that doesn't really answer the question how I wanted. Try and pick up the
Hmm.
phone, they don't answer, and you're back and forth, and it may take 15 hours. You then finish a project in 3. And where that positive
Hmm.
can turn into a negative is if you've got a manager who is always just go, 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 and pushing their team to try and just get through projects and as fast as they possibly can, you then lead yourself to
Okay.
burnout. So you've got to find that moderation of, okay, everyone's in here working. We've been able to get a project that at home probably would have taken a lot longer, but we've been able to get it done in a shorter time frame. Now let's celebrate that
Hmm.
and make sure that's a positive. For some people, where it comes into the negative is definitely the travel and the distance and the added pressures now of maybe they've just had kids throughout the last 2 years in COVID periods, and they're
Hmm.
now navigating getting their kids to childcare and school, and the cost of living's gone up, especially here in Australia. The cost of living is quite high. Those negative aspects start to come in. You've then got fuel prices, you've then got parking prices, you've then got public transport. You've got, if you don't take in your lunch, you've then got to buy food. So there's a lot of money stresses that come in from going back into the office. You then, where am I going to do the washing? Because usually I put it on, go to a meeting, then take it out, put it in the dryer. My washing's done for the day. So a lot of those pressures start to mount up because we haven't had to do them for so long, and that's where I guess your poor mental health can come back in the workplace, because you are
Hmm.
then potentially there for your 6 to 8 hours, depending on how your hours are set up. Um, but when you're looking at a positive, it goes back into that social connection. You can go in, you can get a project that's going to take 15 hours, you get it done in 3. You go, hey, we've done
Hmm.
really well. Let's go and grab lunch. And you're not talking about work anymore. You're talking about life. You're learning new skills off other people. That person's going to run a marathon. Maybe I'll jump on the bandwagon and run a marathon. Oh, look, I've just run a
Hmm.
marathon. I never thought I would. Or that person over there has got 3 kids and I've just had my first. Now I'm learning from them about how they handled their 3 kids. Actually, no, I don't want to learn from you. I'm going to go talk to this person who's got 2, and I like what they're doing. That sort of suits me. So we learn from other human beings. And
Hmm.
going into the office, your productivity will go up. For some, it'll go down if they talk way too much around the in the coffee room or in the kitchen at
Yeah,
lunchtime.
that's
But
me.
you're going to find those really quick questions that you need to get your project done. You're going to be able to ask them straight away. If you've got a really good workflow with working remotely, you probably already have that, but you just can't beat social connection, I don't think.
Okay. So let's take a look at, so we've talked about, individuals and so forth. So let's take a look at the companies. So
Yep.
um companies invest in their employees' development, but how would you say, or how would you gauge the awareness of companies and their willingness to invest in the well-being, especially the mental well-being of their employees? Has that taken? Have you noticed that that has taken has there been an increased awareness by companies, or has that been, steady, or was there a sharp increase due to COVID, or what do you have on that? What's your take?
Massive increase sort of towards the end of COVID and then after COVID actually finished. So a lot of what we found in outside the locker room is a lot of communities and businesses were coming on the prevention end rather than reacting to a situation. So pre-COVID, we
Mhm,
would get a call from an organization to say, "Hey, we had this situation occur. We didn't even see it coming. We need you guys to come in." And now what we're seeing is going, hey, we know these situations are potentially going to occur where someone's got poor mental health or they're really struggling with their well-being or they're going to go through a relationship breakup. We want people around them to know how to support them. We know these situations are going to come. Can we come and can we do the education on it? Can we provide the skills? So it's been a really big uptick. It needs to probably be a little bit more from more organizations. And
mhm,
then a continued education throughout their business as well. But being able to see a lot of businesses go, hey, we want to provide this has been really, really big. And as we know, when someone's got good mental well-being, they feel safe and secure at their workplace, they're going to be more productive. So as a business, you're
mhm.
going to see production increase, but you're also going to see open and transparent conversations where your employees are going to feel more safe to actually talk to you as a business and as a CEO and go, hey, we're actually noticing that this isn't working. Here's our solution, and this is how potentially we can fix it. If we didn't
Has it
have an
been
open,
like,
yeah,
it's been for you, has it been for you like a positive thing? Because I mean, mental health and well-being is oftentimes, I think, most people probably just put it in, one or the other category. When you think of mental health, you're probably thinking of some mental disorder. Probably the most common thing that people think of is either burnout or depression. Those are probably the two things that get mentioned most. But in your field of work, I mean, you don't only focus on those two things, so you have a little more holistic. So for you, this must have been um, kind of rewarding, because your topic is because has received more awareness over the last couple of years than probably, I would say, the last 10 years as a total. Or would I be get right with that guess?
yeah. So it's definitely been good for us to get out into more communities, and as you said, we do provide the more holistic approach and look at the crisis end, which is your depression, your anxiety, your burnout factors as well. But we sit fairly in the prevention end where we're trying to actually say, well, how do we stop those things occurring before they actually get there? And there's no measurement
Mhm.
for us to actually show that to a business. Be like, hey, do our program and your people aren't going to get depressed because you can't predict the
Yeah,
future on whether someone's going to
yeah.
get depressed. So for us, it's been really, really good to be able to get into organizations and say, hey, let's look at the things that you like doing. All right, whether it's
Mhm,
playing golf or walking the dog or doing some sort of sport or going to the gym, and then finding out, well, hey, you've got 20 other people in your team, and 15 of them like doing the same things you do, and you never would have known it until you actually had that conversation. And
mhm,
then when you're opening up those abilities to just have conversations about anything, whether it's good, bad, or ugly, then people are most likely going to talk about, hey, my kid got this award at school, or hey, I did a half marathon on the weekend and it was great. And people would celebrate that. But when it gets to the end of like, hey, I'm really struggling at the moment. I'm going through a divorce, or I'm going through some sort of crisis in my life, or, I just don't know why I'm feeling off today, but I am,
mhm.
then your organization can get around that, then that person's going to feel safe and secure to come back to that business over and over and over again. And
Okay.
there's nothing better than hearing from organizations that we've worked with that, hey, my workers are coming in and they're now saying that I really like coming to this place because you actually care about me. You actually care about my mental health.
Okay.
And it's not just performance, but you're actually caring about what I'm interested in.
The
You're caring
individual.
about correct. And if we can
Okay.
provide that to organizations and organizations can provide that to their employees, then the
Mhm,
biggest thing, especially in Oz, the biggest thing is employee retention. So employee
mhm,
retention, having employees that are there for more than 2 years and continue on, That's a massive thing for businesses because then you're not training someone new, you're not giving them the skills again. You've
Yes,
got someone who's
most
fully
definitely.
experienced all the way through. And those that have stayed there, the older generation probably said, I stayed here because it was convenient. A lot of people in the younger generations
Hmm.
nowadays are saying, I stayed there because I felt included, I felt welcome, I felt safe and
Hmm.
secure. Even though sometimes it may have got hard with different projects, or it may not be as much as what I could have got paid somewhere else, but you can't put a price on how happy you are.
Okay. Okay. So uh, let's move the topic a little bit over to a little bit more into our field of work or the IMC's field of work. So digitalization of learning and training and so forth is our basically a field of expertise. For you though, I mean, you have basically you have been able to stem yourself against this wave of digitalization. So you're kind of also moving the direction and have
Mm.
had one or two projects in that direction, I believe. So what key advantages do you see in digitalizing or digitalizing well-being training as compared to uh, the traditional in-person approaches?
Phew. It's actually astronomical on how much beneficial it's actually been. So, for anyone that's sort of listening, I guess in Europe, to try and give you, if you haven't been to Australia or you haven't looked at a map of Australia,
Hmm.
you can drive 3.5 hours and you're still in the same state. And if you go to somewhere like Queensland, you could drive for a whole day and you still haven't left Queensland. Australia is huge, and there is lots of communities that are in outback Australia, rural Australia, and there's a lot of people there that are struggling and that need
Hmm.
support. They need education, and there's a lot of businesses that are out there, a lot of farming businesses, a lot of agriculture that's out there as well, that have thousands upon thousands of employees, lots of mining companies as well that are out there. So to be able to then take our education, number one, and put it onto a Zoom type meeting, or a Microsoft meeting, Microsoft
Hmm.
Teams meeting, and actually have 100 to 200 people on that call and provide well-being strategies and skills and education to them from wherever they are in Australia or in the world as well, has been
Hmm.
absolutely astronomical. We've worked with sporting clubs in London, and I'm here in Australia, somewhere on the other side of the world at a different time zone, and providing that to 60 to 70 athletes that have been over there. So to be able to digitalize it has been able to help us get to more people, but also to be able to start to move. One of the projects that we're trying to formulate at the moment is to move it into an LMS system, but
Hmm.
providing people with the opportunity to learn on a platform like an LMS, something they
Hmm.
potentially have never been taught before, in a really simple, controlled manner that they can step
Hmm.
by step through and take out of it what they will, I think is a
Hmm.
really, really huge thing. And if we can get that into youth and into businesses and into organizations everywhere, then you can at least turn around and say to someone, "Hey, we did that education, we did that LMS program on mental well-being. Remember what they said about gratitude, or remember what they said about physical fitness. Remember what they said about nutrition." And it's only going to increase our ability to support our mates and our loved ones.
Okay. So, to kind of like encapsulate that in the two quick sentences. So basically, it's enormously increased your ability to reach out to a whole bunch of people, either by virtue of them being in a remote location or by virtue of just having the ability to reach multiple individuals in one session, which probably is harder to organize when you have to be on site.
I got
Um,
a good story for you, Kenneth. It's one of the
okay.
ones that I love the most, which will probably encapsulate it for you. So we, through what we do as well, we have some counselling support that provided through an external company, and they do a lot of their sessions via Zoom, so or FaceTime on your phone.
Hmm.
If you can't get in person, you can do it via FaceTime. And I was in rural outback Australia, and this guy, very very burly Australian man. When you walk in, you're like, this guy doesn't want to talk about mental health at all. Like he's sort of sitting there going, "Why am I here?" type of thing. And it was in
Hmm.
person, which was great. And explain, you can download the OTLR app and you can get support through our external company, and they can FaceTime because you guys live nowhere near where they are.
Just a
And he
quick
came up,
interruption, just to give a scope. How long
yeah,
did it take you to get there?
this one took me, it was a 3-hour flight and then a 4-hour drive.
Okay, so
Yeah,
just to give you a perspective again on the size of Australia.
it
Okay,
was a long way away. Yeah, I passed a lot of paddocks to make sure, and then a lot of dirt. So it was a
and a
long way
couple of
away.
roos.
And shoot, if I hit a roo in the car that I was in, mate, I wouldn't be here. So I'm lucky I didn't hit one of those things. Those things are tanks. They are massive. But no, I sat there and he came up and he's like, mate, that was really good because he's from outback Australia, so I have to do the accent. I was like, oh, okay. And he's like, I'm struggling, but I need to get onto these people, but I don't know how to use my phone. And as soon as he said it, there was a 16-year-old kid behind him that said, hey, I'll help you. And showed him
Mhm,
how to download the app, how to get onto FaceTime, how to organize the session. And this
mhm.
guy, for the last 2 years, has done his session on a Wednesday at 3 p.m. in the afternoon while driving his tractor. And he talks to his counselor every 3 p.m. on FaceTime because a 16-year-old kid showed him how to use it. So would
Wow.
that person still, how would he have been going? He said, "Okay, I'm struggling. I really need some support." He's put his hand up to say he needs it, and then
Mhm.
technology's been able to help him because the closest person they could have done it face to face, I think, would have been about 3.5 hours away, and they would have been booked out for 6 months. Whereas he's been able to get onto someone, do it via FaceTime, sit on a tractor, plow his field, and then away you go. He's got the support he needs.
Okay, so let's go give it since you're handing out advice right and left and good tips. Let's move on to another question I have is um, for our listeners out there, especially maybe businesses, uh, how can they create online well-being training for their company? Uh, Do you have like an example of where to start? Which content should they do they need, or what content do they need to look at?
Yeah, I think for businesses that are out there that have got a really dedicated HR department, I think if you've got one of them already, they will have a lot of the content when it comes to identifying the signs of someone going through a mental health challenge, how we start the
Mhm,
conversation, and what supports are actually out there. A lot of businesses have an EAP program or employee assistance program where they potentially have welfare professionals that they can refer people to. And I
mhm,
think putting that into your introduction for your business is a really big thing. So if
mhm,
you're going to create an LMS, my first and foremost one is start with what are the signs. So what are the signs of burnout? What are the signs of depression, anxiety? If you're starting to notice these in yourself or someone else, start to reach
mhm,
out to your HR department if you have one, or your direct manager if you can, and they're there. Then how you start the conversation. So how do we actually approach that conversation is a really big thing, and then what support services, and then start looking at a lot of the positive mental well-being strategies that people can put in place. Now, this is the big one: is everybody is different. So you need to give individuals a long list of strategies, and it might seem like there's too much choice, but if you only give
mhm.
them two or three, that might not suit those people. Like if you told me to meditate, mate, I'm not going to meditate. I can't sit still for long
Okay.
enough. I've tried it a lot. It's not my thing. But if I go for
Mhm,
a run or I go and play golf, that's my meditation. So everyone's going to have their different ways of, relaxing, getting back their
mhm,
positive mental well-being, and it's about providing that education that hey, everyone's different and actually put it into play. If you don't have a HR department that can create that sort of training for you, and again, they've
mhm,
gone and done the study themselves, so they should have all the information there, and it should just be a really simplistic thing. Put an introduction, make sure you're
mhm,
covering it maybe every 3 to 6 months with your employees. It doesn't have to be long, just has to be sort of 15, 20 minutes. Remind them
mhm,
of what the positive well-being strategies are, remind them of the signs, remind them of support. And if you're continually doing that every quarter, then people are going to
mhm.
have it fresh in their mind. We've been into businesses where they go, I didn't even know our business had an employee assistant program.
Okay.
Um,
But do you think that HR departments are at the point that they're that well suited, or is it would you consider from your experience? Um, Oftentimes, I would there's a certain air of expertise that you can say you have, and when it comes to you know um, like an initial setup, I would guess HR can probably cover that, but still. If you're really going to tackle the problem, then isn't it oftentimes wouldn't it be advantageous to partner up with like a business like yours with a little bit more expertise in the field and experience in creating that? I mean, okay, if you weigh it, if you're
Yeah,
weighing it as compared to, something or nothing, then I guess something is better than nothing. But,
yeah.
for the final touch, I would, especially when it comes to the topic of mental health, um, I would tend to, my opinion would be to consult an expert.
Yeah, and definitely. If you have to sort of go externally, then yeah, definitely get someone like us to come in and be able to provide that training, that support, and then give you the LMS system to be able to set up for your business, and then train your employees on how to support each other, and then go potentially one step further with some accredited training for your HR department. And why I say sort of start with the HR department is if you ask most HR managers, they would sort of say they're probably dealing with all the mental health challenges on a daily basis.
Hmm.
And there are a lot of accreditations where they can go out and get some expertise in the field as well. And if they don't have it already, they probably should go out and get it pretty quickly because they're probably dealing with mental health day in, day out. And then you've got physical injuries. But yeah, if you're needing to go external, someone like us is great and someone with the expertise, but it needs to be relatable to everybody. And if you're in a
Okay.
large business, you need to find the right organization like ours that
Hmm.
happily tailors to everybody. Because
Okay.
sometimes you can get people that come in and they go from right at the crisis end where it's all doom and gloom and it's, you need to focus on these things. And if you get to this point, you got to pull out and all that. So I think you've got to take a holistic approach when it comes to the workplace and understand that
Hmm.
what Kenneth likes is different to what Todd likes. And
Okay.
what is trying to trigger Kenneth is different to what trigger Todd's. And we need to be able to tap into ourselves and go, what is going to annoy me? And what are the things that I need to get out of this to get back to a positive mindset? And teaching people that, hey, it's okay to actually say what you do is great, but what I do is different. And everything works different for everybody. So putting that into place, especially at
Great.
an
It's kind of
introduction level.
you call it football and I call it soccer, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no, we call it
Bad
soccer
joke.
here
Bad
over
joke.
in Australia too.
What? Really? You
Yeah,
guys
yeah,
call it
yeah, yeah,
soccer?
yeah. We call
Oh,
it
okay.
soccer. We're like you Americans. We're
Okay.
East
Once
soccer.
again, I've managed to, from a joke, it went to a signal of ignorance there.
No,
Okay, that
that's
was
right.
that was a very good layover on that. So, you've created. So, what is your experience? Have you what have you created in the digital environment? Have you created like a web-based training? Have you created apps, or what technologies for all those people that are on the learning development side of this conversation? What technologies have you applied and used so far, and what has your
Yeah.
experience been with those technologies?
It's they've been great. So the first one that we have at Outside the Locker Room is an app based. So we have an
Hmm.
app that provides more the welfare resources. So we do a survey at the start to understand the mental health literacy, help seeking behavior, and general health in a de-identified platform of the participants that complete our programs. And
Hmm.
then from that, we can provide that sort of de-identified data in article form written by a university over here, and they do all the research for it. They pass that on to governing bodies, they pass it on to ourselves so that we can improve our program, but we then understand the landscape of mental health literacy and health seeking behavior for basically Australians is what we're going for. Inside that as well, as I said, is the connection to counselling services that can now be done via FaceTime or via
Hmm.
over the phone, which is absolutely fantastic for those that maybe number one time poor or their anxieties or their depressions or whatever their mental health challenges are that don't allow them to go into public, and they can do it from
Hmm.
home, which has always been a
Okay.
barrier in the past as well. So that's a really big shift, is that the ability to utilize a welfare professional from home or where you feel comfortable and do it
Hmm.
via a technological space is probably the biggest one that came out of COVID. Is a lot
Okay.
of people would
Is
need to
there
go, yep,
is there any uh, how should I say this? Um, What about are there any like safeguards when it comes to using the app when it comes to making a diagnosis? Because
yeah,
there's like how should I say it? Not a warranty, but responsibility, due
duty of
diligence. What
care.
am I Duty of care. Yeah. Okay. Duty of care. There,
Yep.
there you go. Okay. Because in essence, I would assume the Germans are always very strict, and you know, so if you were to advise somebody to take a certain course of action for in your app because the app diagnosed something or said something like that,
Yeah,
and or actually, the Americans probably be they'd sue you, right away if you
yeah,
did something. Basically, the app said, we diagnose you with this and this, and then basically the person goes out there and does something, and then gets all screwed up. How does that work? How does
yeah.
that
So lot
was that
of
taken
lot
into
of
consideration in your app? That's what I'm
Yeah,
asking.
yeah, we really do. So a lot of work goes in behind the scenes that any of the survey that we utilize is not triggering aspects when we're asking the questions are not triggering for someone's
Hmm.
mental health. We're not trying to diagnose whatsoever. We're not looking at the individual's mental well-being. We're just looking at their mental knowledge of mental health. So it's a little bit of a difference there. And if they're
Hmm.
working with a counselor online or a psychologist online, each counselor and psychologist would do those sort of pre-checks before they would actually go into the session. So there'd be a
Okay.
lot of due diligence that happens already right at the start. They'd have to go through proper processes and proper steps to go,
Hmm.
yes, we feel that you're well enough to do this via online, or no, you probably need to come in, or I need to refer you to a local service if you're not in my vicinity to be able to come and do face to face. So there'd be a lot of those processes that's covered,
Hmm.
and making sure that the risk versus reward of doing it online, the reward is a lot higher than the risk, and we're not putting someone in a detrimental space for themselves and their health.
Okay, so you have kind of like two avenues that you've so far explored. One is an app, which basically,
Yep.
I guess, the individual can use, and then uh, I guess it would be self-contained. So there would be
Yep.
a result or tips or something that come out of the app, and then the other course, the other direction that you use would be, as you said, virtual train. So. Online training versus with uh, no virtual trainings in form of a Zoom or
Yep.
Outlook session and so forth and so on. Um, and is there any? This might be reaching a little bit far, but we are learning development. What about virtual reality or augmented reality? Is that something that is that creeping into what you guys do, or are you guys still is that still far away?
Yeah, look, I would love to. It'd be
Hmm.
great. We're not probably a big enough organization right now to be able to put the resources into something like that,
Hmm.
which sucks, but that's just the reality of life. But
Hmm.
look, the augmented reality and the virtual reality is something that if we could potentially do it, I'd jump on it straight away. And I think it's definitely going to be a game changer for mental well-being and mental skills and understanding on how to actually do that. We see a lot of organizations that utilize videos and video-based
Hmm.
things to be able to learn, which is great that people can go back and review as many times as they possibly need to be able to make sure that, okay, well, did I hear that person properly? Or like a book,
Hmm.
go back and go, there was that tip and I need that at my point in life right now. But the augmented reality and the virtual reality, I think it'd be great. No one's doing it that I know of in our space at the
Hmm.
moment. And I don't think anyone's, from what I know, is even in development stage of anything like that. But I think the first person that jumps onto it and the first organization that jumps onto it knows how to use it properly, it's going to be a game changer.
Ah, okay, that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought it would go that far because I've kind of, uh, for me, virtual reality and augmented reality have kind of reached a limit. It took off like really rapidly for a while, and then it kind of like for me, looking at media and so forth, it's kind of flattened out. Okay, Apple's now introduced their new glasses, so maybe it'll once again kick off that. But when I look at okay, I have a little bit of a narrow vision. I game a little bit, so looking at the gaming world, I don't see that much virtual reality taking place. Most people still, do the regular gaming or online or even mobile gaming. So, um, okay, but
I think with that,
let's get
before
yeah.
you move on, I think with that is that if you can submerge yourself, but you're still at home, I think that's where the game change is going to be. So if you find people will go and do, if we're going back to the working remotely type of thing, right? A lot of people do
Mhm.
workouts at home. They will do, they work from home. They do workouts from home. They do their yoga, their meditation, all that sort of stuff from home. But if you can actually insert yourself into a virtual reality and feel like you're actually there and have that full enclosed view of it, then it's going to completely change. It could change the physiology of how you're actually doing. Like you can just look at Peloton, for example, the amount of
Hmm.
people that use Peloton and they feel like they're in an actual class, but they're riding their bike or they're running on their treadmill and they're at home. They're not getting that social connection, but they feel like they're in it. If you've got
Yeah.
someone who jumps in and
Hmm.
goes, I feel like I'm in a yoga class because I've got the headset on, I've got the headphones on. I'm actually just on my floor at home, but my feeling is that I'm in a yoga class with a bunch of other people, or I'm getting
Ah, okay.
doing yoga on the beach and I can see the waves in front of me and I'm being told what to do and there's, an
Mhm.
AI in front of me. You might find that that's going to have a massive benefit to people that don't just want to be looking at their brick wall at home doing yoga. They're actually
Okay.
looking at the waves in the ocean, or they're in a rainforest, or they're listening to the rain come down, or whatever it may be, could have a massive effect on people.
Okay, so you can put that on your agenda of the many things that you have to do.
I've just got a new idea:
Because
augmented
you're
reality for
swamped with work
meditation.
from what I hear, so you can put that move that up on the agenda. Todd creates a virtual reality mental well-being training course. That would be the kicker. So let's wrap up our little podcast here because we're almost at the end, time wise, with maybe some simple advice. So, I guess this question is something that you probably get asked a lot.
Yeah,
Um, can you name, or how should I best put this? Simple advice. Okay. So, if, first of all, the first question is, what would you recommend somebody, what would you recommend to somebody to become? How can you check your own mental health? That would be the first question. Because, like I said, I think a lot of people don't even realize that they're in a state of, you know, imbalance. So, what would be three easy steps to recognize that you're in a state of imbalance? Would that be a good, correct terminology, or is good
yeah,
way to put
yeah.
it?
So, good ways to be able to check your well-being. And one of the most simplest systems we use is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So five and four being, excellent, four being very good, three being it's okay, two being average, one being it's really, really poor. So your
Hmm.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1 system. And if you want to just go with three things, three of the most simple things that you can look at and actually rate yourself, whether it's every day, every week, every month, whenever you want to do it, is go, how am I going with my own physical health? Five, four,
Hmm.
three, two, one. And if you rate yourself a two, well, you probably need to improve it. Then you can go with how am I feeling myself with my own mental well-being? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then you could potentially group everything else in. How am I feeling with my career, my family, and my relationships? And then go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So if you come out of that and you go, my physical is a four because I go to the gym every day and I run.
Hmm.
I'm eating really well, so I know my body's getting the right nutrition. I'm doing pretty well, and that could potentially improve and not have so many drinks during the week. But everything else is pretty good. My mental is a four. I'm doing things that make me happy, what I do for fun, things that de-stress me at the end of the day. My work-life balance is pretty good, or it could be that I feel mentally quite well at the moment, but my relationships and my career and my spending time with my kids is a two. So I would
Hmm.
look at the two and I would go, well, four and the other two are going pretty all right, my physical and my mental. I want to maintain
Hmm.
them. So what am I doing at the moment? I want to keep that, but I want to focus on
Hmm.
number two and make sure that comes up, or my relationships, and make that sure that comes up to a four. So it's a really easy way to check in. Now, the big thing with mental health is it ebbs and flows. So it's never always
Hmm.
going to stay up. So your physical may come down to a two, your mental may come down to a three, and then you go, okay, well, they've come down from good and very good. I need to push them back up. They're going to get my focus because my relationships are at a five. So life is going to hit you in different ways. You can't always
Hmm.
stay up, but you're always not going to stay down. So that's
Okay.
another big thing is if you're down at the moment, you have the power to push those three things back up. Now that's only three pillars. You could have four, you could have 10, how many you want to break it up. But to keep it simple, just look at your physical, your own mental well-being, and then how are my relationships and my career going. And if any of them are below a three, try and get them back up to a four or a five.
Okay. Then next question. We have two more questions, and the next one is for businesses. How would
Mhm.
you say that if a business, for example, wants to do what you said? So basically, they want to or basically start programs to support their employees. with their well-being, where should they start? How should they go about it? What would you say, or be three steps that they should follow in order to get that program launched?
First step is don't say it, be proactive and go and do it. So a lot
Okay.
of organizations and a lot of businesses out there will go, oh, we're going to care about our employees' mental well-being. But they haven't put any steps in place yet to actually start to go down that path. My advice is don't say anything until you've actually been proactive and gone out and come to an outside the locker room, or you've gone and found an organization, or you're going to do it internally to start supporting your employees' mental well-being. Don't say before you do before you say. So once you've done the doing part and you go, yep, we're putting steps in place, then you can say, hey, we're going to start we're trying to support your mental well-being, and this is how we're going to do it. Because if you actually go, yes, we're going to do it, and then you go, here's the solution that we're going to go towards, people are going to go, oh wow, actually they've started to do it, rather than just it's just another thing that management has said. It's just another
Okay.
thing the business has said. So go and do the doing part first before you say. And then once
So
you've so you
get
go.
the complete package set up and then present the complete package rather than doing like a step-by-step rollout saying, oh, we're going to do this and then follow it up with the actual training. So make a comprehensive plan, see how you want to attack the problem, how you want to address the problem, and then not only make aware of the problem, but then also provide solutions or some type of training for that. Okay.
Correct.
Sounds
Yeah,
good.
correct. Because if
Okay.
you actually come in with it doesn't have to be a full complete package, because we'll learn on the go and we can adapt with what we've started. But you've got to have something tangible, something that you can actually put in place and get people to actually start to use. And that could be, it could be web-based training, it could be an LMS training, it could be a Zoom type of training or a face-to-face type of training. It could be
Mhm.
check-ins and supports, or here's our welfare partner that we can refer you to if you are going through a difficult time. If you've got something tangible that people can use and they can see it and they can go, actually, I could grab onto that if I need it, then that's going to be so much more powerful than just, hey, it's going to be here and it's going to be here in 6 months. Because we know what happens, projects get pushed out. So it has
Yes.
to be from a top down perspective, or from across each level. Hey, we want to do this, but we're not going to go and tell everyone we're going to do it just yet. But we're going to move really quickly and make sure we put it in place, and then go, hey,
Mhm.
we actually started doing this because we really care about it. We don't want organizations that go, yeah, we care, we're going to bring it in, and then it just all falls by the wayside, which happens all the time. Because
Ah,
then you get
okay.
pressure that, hey, you said you were going to help us with our mental well-being, but you didn't. And then businesses go, oh, we got too busy. Well, no,
Mm.
you've got to actually go and do it first, make it a priority, and then launch it to your employee or your team base. And then they're going to go, wow, this is brilliant.
Okay, cool. Well, Todd, thank you very, very much. That was very, very insightful. I think we covered a lot of bases. We also had a lot of good information, and for anybody who wasn't aware of the topic, I think is now definitely increased their awareness. So the final question would be for me then, if you had a recommendation for a next podcast guest, would you have one?
Oh, interesting. From a learning and development perspective,
Yes.
I would say if you
Well, if you
went
want to,
with
if you want to deviate from that, deviate a little bit. We'll see what
no, I
It's an
think
open
from a
question,
learning
so
I think a learning and development perspective, one that always interests me is anything from the military. Because they have to
military.
train, yeah, because they have to learn and develop so many different roles and so many different aspects and people from so many different backgrounds, that
Hmm.
the learning and development of someone in the military, I think, is quite an interesting one. And they would have to have adapted a lot throughout COVID, and especially in the technological space too. And if you're looking for augmented and virtual reality, they've probably got a fair
Hmm.
bit of stuff happening there. So that'd be a really interesting topic to see what have they done from a learning and development in technology space to
Okay,
get a
Todd,
lot of their soldiers up and
you
about.
definitely surprised me with that one. And I mean, listening to you, that makes very, very good sense. Did you come up with that off the top of your head, or is that something that you've been mulling around, thought wise, or was there any
Uh,
like connection that brought you to
So
this?
No, so I listened to a podcast a long time ago, and I look military sort of been in our family for quite some time. But I was listening to a podcast, and it was like anyone that's at the elite level, where they go and
Hmm.
learn from, whether it's a CEO or a lead athlete or whatever it may be, where they go and learn from is they then go to military, because the military is like the echelon of fitness and organization. Like if you're going to go into a war zone, you need to be pretty
Ah.
prepared and understand a lot of things, and then their
Hmm.
admin is huge. So
There's
read a
very,
lot of
very, very little room for error, right?
Correct. You're literally talking one of the only jobs in the world that is literal life and death if when you go
Hmm.
out into
Hmm.
a war zone. So I think from your learning development, especially from the technological side of things, that one just popped in my head. Just like that'd be pretty cool to understand how have they evolved over the last 2 years to
Okay.
get their soldiers up and about when knowing that they had to go through COVID protocols and there's so many different aspects. There's so many different jobs in military. How have they adapted it for all of their training aspects? That'd be a long podcast.
Hey, ours turned out to be long too. So, okay, cool. Todd, then thank you very, very much. Anybody who wants to reach out and get a little bit more information can reach out to Todd. We'll provide you with the link. So you can just contact him and maybe hire him as your expert for your company, or just reach out for him to as a private individual. Because, like you said, you do a lot of charity work, so or it's charity-based organization. So,
Yep.
whichever avenue you want, you can reach out to Todd, and I'm sure he'll respond to you with the same kind of cool, great, and enlightening answers that you provided here for the podcast. So, thank you very much, Todd. Anything
Thanks for
last
having
words
me.
you would like to say, or?
Just do more of what makes you happy and more things that you do for fun. Do more of it.
Okay, cool. So, on that note, thank you very much. If you like the podcast, click on the like button and see you and hear from you in the next podcast. Thanks.
See you, mate.